Iran just detonated a $94 billion bomb. No explosion, no missiles, no soldiers. Just a phone call, a wire transfer, and 73 hours of silence. And by the time U.S. intelligence realized what happened, it was already too late to stop it. This is the weapon that kept 3 U.S. presidents awake at night. The weapon that costs Iran $6 million to deploy, but forces America to spend $600 million to counter. The weapon that killed 241 U.S. Marines in Beirut in 1983 planted IEDs under U.S. Humvees in Baghdad in 2004 and fired 300 drones and missiles at Israel in April 2024, while Iran's fingerprints were invisible. The weapon that doesn't need a launch code, a radar signature, or a nuclear warhead. It's called the Axis of Resistance, and it is the most sophisticated, most lethal, most invisible military network on the planet. Forget the F-35, forget the aircraft carriers, forget the hypersonic missiles. What Iran built over 40 years is something no Pentagon budget can simply outspend. A web of proxy militias, terror financing pipelines, encrypted communication networks, and ideological indoctrination programs stretching from Lebanon to Yemen, from Iraq to Gaza, from Venezuela to West Africa. A shadow army of 200,000 fighters spread across 7 countries, all answering to a single doctrine, but none wearing Iranian uniforms. And that's exactly the point. If you're new to Navy Force USA, we break down the most complex military strategies on the planet. Subscribe now and hit that bell, because what we're about to reveal is something the mainstream media refuses to say out loud. Let's go back to the beginning. 1979. The Islamic Revolution sweeps Iran. The new supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, understands one thing with ruthless clarity. Iran cannot fight America head-to-head. Not now. Maybe not ever. The U.S. Navy has 11 aircraft carrier strike groups. Iran has 0. The U.S. Air Force operates 13,000 aircraft. Iran has fewer than 350, most of them Cold War-era relics. The Pentagon's annual budget is $886 billion. Iran's entire military budget is $10 billion. Direct confrontation is suicide, so Iran chose a different path. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, established a unit called the Quds Force. Its mission was simple and terrifying: project Iranian power beyond Iranian borders without ever admitting it. Train militias, fund insurgencies, arm groups that share Iran's enemies. Build a network so diffuse, so decentralized, so deeply embedded in local populations that no military strike could ever destroy it completely. By 1982, the Quds Force had already created its first masterpiece, Hezbollah. Iran poured $100 million per year into a Lebanese militia operating from the slums of Beirut. By 2024, that investment had produced an organization with 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel, a political wing controlling Lebanon's parliament, social services feeding 1.5 million people, and underground tunnel systems stretching 150 miles beneath southern Lebanon. The U.S. State Department estimates Hezbollah's arsenal is now worth more than $2 billion. For every dollar Iran spent, it got $20 of strategic leverage back. What's your read on this? Is Hezbollah primarily a military threat or a political one? Type A for military, Type B for political. Drop your answer below. But Hezbollah was just the beginning. By 2003, when U.S. forces rolled into Iraq, Iran had already been preparing for this moment for 2 decades. The IRGC didn't need to fire a single shot. They simply activated sleeper networks already embedded inside Iraq. Shia militias that Iran had trained, funded, and armed since the 1980s suddenly emerged with Iranian-supplied EFPs, explosively formed penetrators, capable of punching through the armor of M1 Abrams tanks like paper. Between 2003 and 2011, these Iranian-backed groups killed at least 603 American soldiers in Iraq. The U.S. military confirmed this number publicly. The real figure is believed to be higher. Iran spent approximately $2 billion on this campaign. The U.S. spent $2 trillion on the Iraq War and still left without victory. The math is terrifying. And then came the masterstroke. In 2011, as the Arab Spring erupted across the Middle East, Iran identified the single most strategic piece of real estate in the entire region: Yemen, a country at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, a country controlling the Bab al-Mandab Strait, the narrow choke point through which 17,000 ships and 12% of global trade pass every single year. Iran began funding the Houthis, a Shia militia in Yemen's north that had been fighting the Yemeni government for years. Iran didn't create the Houthis, but Iran turned them into something far more dangerous than a domestic rebel group. IRGC advisors arrived. Iranian engineers delivered weapons technology, drone blueprints, anti-ship missile schematics, ballistic missile components smuggled in pieces on fishing boats across the Arabian Sea. The total Iranian investment in the Houthis between 2015 and 2024 estimated at $2 to $4 billion, a rounding error in the Pentagon budget. The return on investment, catastrophic for global trade. In late 2023, the Houthis began attacking commercial shipping in the Red Sea. By January 2024, more than 2,000 ships had rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 10 to 14 days and $1 million in extra fuel costs per voyage. Global shipping insurance rates spiked 300%. The total economic damage to global trade, $94 billion and counting, according to the UN Conference on Trade and Development. $94 billion caused by a militia that doesn't have a single fighter jet, doesn't have a navy, doesn't have satellite communications. The U.S. Navy deployed Carrier Strike Group Ike to the region. USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a $13 billion floating fortress, plus destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and 5,000 sailors. Operation Prosperity Guardian launched. American warships began intercepting Houthi drones and missiles. Here's what almost no one reported. Each SMA-2 missile fired by a U.S. destroyer to shoot down a Houthi drone costs $2.1 million. Each Houthi drone costs $20,000 to build. The U.S. fired more than 100 SM-2 and SM-6 interceptors in 3 months. Cost over $200 million. The Houthis kept launching because Iran kept resupplying. It's not a military battle. It's an economic war of attrition. And Iran designed it to be unwinnable for a conventional military power. Don't miss what comes next. This is where it gets even more disturbing. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next deep dive. Now let's talk about the financing, because the money is the weapon that makes all other weapons possible. The U.S. Treasury Department has sanctioned Iran more than 1,000 times since 1979. More sanctions than any other country in history. Iranian banks are cut off from SWIFT, the global financial messaging system. Iranian oil exports are legally forbidden. Iranian assets in the U.S. are frozen. And yet, in 2023 alone, Iran exported 1.5 million barrels of oil per day, nearly double the 2022 figure. Revenue, approximately $35 billion. The buyer, China. The method, a shadow fleet of 200 tankers operating under flags of convenience, using ship-to-ship transfers in international waters, falsifying GPS coordinates, and accepting payment in Chinese yuan through secondary banking channels that bypass SWIFT entirely. The U.S. sanctions are a fence with a door, and China holds the key. Iran also runs a global money laundering network through a web of front companies in the UAE, Iraq, Turkey, and Malaysia. A 2022 U.S. Treasury report identified 13 front companies in Dubai alone funneling money to Hezbollah. The UAE government shut them down. Within 90 days, 11 replacement companies had registered. And here's the number that should terrify every American taxpayer. The U.S. intelligence community estimates Iran's total annual investment in its proxy network at $2 to $3 billion per year. That's less than 3 F-35 fighters. Think about that. 3 F-35 jets, or a global shadow army capable of closing the Red Sea, threatening Israel's existence, destabilizing 4 Arab governments, and killing American soldiers across 2 decades. What would you have done if you were the U.S. National Security Advisor in 2020, when Iran was rebuilding its proxy network after Soleimani's death? Would you have launched surgical strikes to disrupt it, or tried a new diplomatic approach? Comment your answer below. This is the debate that tore Washington apart. Let's talk about the ideological weapon, because this is the part that the missiles and sanctions crowd never wants to discuss. Iran doesn't just buy loyalty, it manufactures it. Since 1979, the IRGC has run a global network of religious schools, cultural centers, and media outlets specifically designed to recruit and indoctrinate young men into the axis of resistance ideology. In Lebanon, Hezbollah's Al-Manar TV reaches 12 million viewers. In Iraq, Iran-backed militias run hospitals, schools, and employment agencies for 8 million people. In Yemen, Houthi-controlled territory of 22 million people has been exposed to a decade of Iranian-influenced religious education. The result, an ideological supply chain, a conveyor belt of motivated fighters who don't need to be paid because they genuinely believe they're fighting a holy war against American imperialism. They recruit their brothers. They train their sons. They teach their daughters to support the cause. This is not a militia you can bomb out of existence. This is a movement. And the U.S. has no equivalent capability. America cannot run madrasas in foreign countries. America cannot embed CIA officers inside foreign religious institutions. America cannot create a counter-ideology that resonates with young men in the slums of Beirut, Baghdad, and Sana'a. The First Amendment prevents government-controlled media. American values prevent the manipulation of religious institutions. These are strengths at home. They are weaknesses in asymmetric ideological warfare. Support the channel by giving this video a thumbs up. This kind of detailed geopolitical analysis takes 40 hours of research to produce. Every like helps us keep making it. Now let's fast forward to today. April 2024. Iran launched the largest single missile and drone attack in Middle Eastern history. 300 projectiles simultaneously fired at Israel. 170 drones, 30 cruise missiles, 120 ballistic missiles. The attack cost Iran an estimated $80 to $100 million. Israel and its allies, including U.S. warships in the region, spent approximately $1.3 billion in interceptors to shoot it down. Iran fired $100 million. The response cost $1.3 billion. Every number in this story has this same terrible ratio. But here's what was buried in the news cycle. While everyone watched the spectacular light show in the skies above Israel, Iran's actual strategic assets were untouched. Hezbollah's 150,000 rockets sat in their bunkers. The Houthis continued their Red Sea campaign. Iranian-backed militias in Iraq fired 170 separate attacks on U.S. bases in the preceding months. The attack on Israel was a demonstration, a message. Look what we can do when we want to. The real weapon was the restraint that surrounded it. After the attack, the U.S. pressured Israel not to strike Iranian nuclear facilities or oil infrastructure. Why? Because a full-scale war with Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of global oil supply passes every day, and trigger a global recession. Iran knows this. Iran's ability to threaten the strait without actually closing it gives them permanent strategic leverage. It's called the threshold strategy. Stay just below the level of provocation that triggers full U.S. military response. Make every day a low-grade crisis. Exhaust American attention, American resources, and American political will. It's working. Between January 2024 and October 2024, Iranian-backed groups attacked U.S. military positions in Iraq and Syria more than 180 times. The U.S. responded with 85 retaliatory strikes. American casualties: 3 soldiers killed, dozens wounded. Iranian casualties: 0 IRGC personnel confirmed killed. Proxy losses: unknown. The asymmetry is complete. Here's the uncomfortable truth that no politician wants to say. The United States has no good military solution to the axis of resistance. Bombing Iran's nuclear facilities does not destroy its proxy network. Killing IRGC commanders creates martyrs and prompts immediate succession. Imposing more sanctions increases Chinese involvement in Iranian oil markets. Military occupation is politically impossible after Iraq and Afghanistan. The only tools that work against a shadow army are shadow tools: intelligence infiltration, financial disruption, counter-ideological programs, and sustained diplomatic pressure on Iran's supply chain. These take decades. They're invisible. They don't make headlines. They don't win elections. And they require a kind of strategic patience that America's political cycle, where every president has 4 years to show results, structurally cannot sustain. Was America's failure to contain the axis of resistance a failure of strategy or a failure of political will? Type A for strategy. Type B for political will. This is the debate that historians will be analyzing for a century. This is why the Revolutionary Guards have been building this network for 40 years. Because they understood something about the American political system that perhaps Americans don't want to admit. That a democracy optimized for 4-year election cycles cannot sustain a 40-year strategic campaign. Iran can. Because the supreme leader doesn't face elections. Because the IRGC answers to ideology, not opinion polls. Because martyrdom is a recruitment tool, not a deterrent. The United States has the most powerful conventional military force in human history. $886 billion per year. 800 military bases in 80 countries. 11 carrier strike groups. 3,700 nuclear warheads. The ability to put a guided munition through a window from 2,000 miles away. And yet, a network of militias funded on $2 to $3 billion per year has managed to drain American resources, close a major global shipping route, threaten 2 U.S. allies with destruction, and kill hundreds of American soldiers, all while maintaining plausible deniability and avoiding direct military confrontation. This is the greatest asymmetric strategic achievement in modern military history. Freedom is never free. And the price of freedom isn't always paid on conventional battlefields with conventional weapons. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you can't see, can't target, and can't defeat by simply spending more money. The axis of resistance exists because 40 years ago, a group of strategists in Tehran understood the truth better than their opponents did. Understanding this network is the first step to countering it. And America will need every ounce of its strategic intelligence to find a path through this shadow war, because the conventional playbook is already spent. What do you think the U.S. should do next? Should Washington invest more in counter-proxy intelligence operations? Or is it time for a fundamentally different diplomatic approach with Tehran? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every single one, and your insights shape what we cover next. If you made it to the end of this video, you're the core of this community. Hit subscribe, smash that like button, and share this with someone who needs to understand what's actually happening in the Middle East. This kind of detailed tactical and strategic breakdown takes 40 hours of research. Your support keeps us going. Navy Force USA. We'll see you in the next one.